Thanks, Kim.
Welcome. Okay.
Now we are. Thanks, Mitch.
Great. So I'm seeing some thoughts around LAP loans, which is great. Yeah, again, I think we do want to have a process that works well with our other early funding processes, as I mentioned. And I think working in concert with the LAP and capacity building programs that we already have is going to be really helpful, I think, for projects as they come through the pipeline. And I see a comment there, just the one for now, but so forgiven if not funded, otherwise 0 to 1% interest and repayment at project financial close. Is that thinking specifically around one of the two products, or is that looking for pre-development or feasibility loans in particular?
I think it could apply to both. I mean, if the project never gets funded, that's kind of that's the whole purpose as to why this is a challenging process to get project ready, because the costs are really burdensome. And if it has to come with a caveat of like, it has to have been vetted by OHCS to ensure that, it's not so we couldn't go out there and just say, we're going to build this property in the middle of the ocean. Obviously there'd have to be some like, what am I trying to say? Like someone is vetted and checklist that, yeah, okay, this project can, or we do see this project as potentially feasible. And then that would allow for the feasibility and pre-development work to continue. And then, if something catastrophic happens, like we identify some endangered species of butterfly that lives in that land, and it was something we couldn't have seen unless we got to the environmental process, the hope would be that that could be forgiven. If we end up getting to the project closing, though, I think that would be when it would be suitable for repayment, because it could just be built into the invoicing at closing.
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Thanks, Jessica. Any other thoughts around sort of forgiveness criteria? Go ahead, Lydia.
Yeah, I think kind of piggybacking on what Jessica was saying, I think I would just, encourage that this conversation isn't separate from the one around readiness, and a lot of the feedback that OHCS has already received, that, less about a specific, month target, but really about what is needed in that shift is this kind of tiered or staged ability to give projects that assurance before we start committing more funding to advance a project. And I think even more so if OHCS is putting, loans out there, right? It speaks back to the need to have some early assurance or this understanding of competitiveness for projects, both on the developer side, but also now as OHCS as the lender, right, for these pre-development funds. And then the question about kind of what the ability to forgive or extend loans if a project isn't funded, even if it's gone through some of those early stages of vetting at OHCS. So I would just encourage that this conversation, I think, really speaks and supports a lot of the feedback already given around, setting up a managed pipeline and a kind of multi-staged process. And I don't know exactly where the pre-development funds would start to come in, but to me, they feel very, very connected.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks. Tracy?
I just want to plus one and build on what Lydia was sharing. So HDC comes at this conversation both as a consultant for projects, but also as a pre-development lender. And so I'm wearing two hats. So as a consultant, my instinct is to tell my clients, go apply for an OHCS pre-development loan, because logically that is going to increase the odds of your project being funded. I don't think that's your design goal here, but I'm just sort of like thinking through unintended consequences. And so the plus one to Lydia's comment about where in the pipeline this loan occurs is really going to make a difference in terms of it being advancing the goals you're trying to advance. And I think then also +1 to one of the comments in the blue, $500,000 is not enough for a pre-development, except perhaps on the tiniest projects or sort of oddest circumstances, to get to what's currently, which granted may change, proposed as readiness to proceed criteria. Like the one that jumps out at me is 75% CD drawings. That's a very expensive standard to hit. And so thinking about supporting the organizations that need it most, and how do you partner with other CDFIs to make your funds go further and to get this timeline right? Is it that OHCS is maybe the first in funds to incentivize other CDFIs to step in and say like, oh, okay, OHCS is already in. That really loosens up my ability then to jump in and say, well, shit, if OHCS is in for 500,000, I'm okay going in for the next million, and then how that, it's getting technical, but that's like getting technical is what's going to make this work. What position we all have, how much time we have to spend with DOJ arguing about what position we all have. So I guess, and then I'll just kind of close out for now to let you know, Mitch, and I was going to email you about this, that so HDC Community Fund, NOAA, CASA, and Community Housing Fund are going to get together and try to provide some consolidated feedback. And so hopefully maybe pull together a meeting with you and friends, Heather, Ty, whoever, to talk through those technical details that are really make the difference in making it work. So thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, and that sounds fantastic, really. Yeah, I think that's the line of thinking we've had already in these discussions is, if the need extends beyond 500,000, which in many cases it will, hopefully being able to use this as leverage for other CDFIs or other lenders to be able to have more surety coming back and filling in the gaps there for folks as they come in. I think we really do want to work collaboratively with other lenders and want to do so in a really thoughtful way. So definitely want to, and speak of the devil, here's Bill, go for it.
And I just want to acknowledge that Rachel is here too from doing CSH's pre-dev lending. So.
Yeah, thanks, Tracy, for that. I do look at this whole redesign process as possibly disadvantaging smaller developers by putting much more emphasis on the early phases and risk early on, and thus possibly more risk on what Tracy just was talking about on the CDFIs that might fund. I also want to call attention to the other bucket of money you have that we haven't talked about here, and that's your land acquisition fund. That's another competitive product with those of us that have been out here. Most of our actual pre-development loans at NOAA are land loans. And so that's just another competitive concern that I think, just speaking selfishly as a CDFI, I hope we can figure out how to partner on those as well in a similar way, in addition to this.
Great point, Bill. Thanks. And yeah, if there's any specific lab questions that folks want to pose, we've got Becky in the room, which is great. So we can hopefully talk about how these funds are potentially going to braid as well. And again, that's I think TBD in a lot of instances. We really want to make sure we again get it right. So this is really just the first stab at it, with the acknowledgement that we do want to be able to braid those resources. But it's a good point, Bill. We want to make sure we're thinking about things like competition and where you all slot into this problem too.
And Mitch, really quick, I think we anticipate putting some of our capacity building money towards some of our
Right. Yeah, which I think gets at the conversation around the pipeline too. I think again, we're still working on the details of that, but definitely see this working collaboratively with our other resources in addition to with external resources from CDFIs and other lenders as well. So I think this is very much a puzzle piece. I think it's a big one, and we're excited about it, but it's, I think, rarely going to be exclusively this, and frankly, on a lot of projects. So, yeah.
Sorry, I'm gonna have to scroll down to see the new stuff, so then we can't see the questions anymore. So anyway, lots of good input. Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate the keep going. This is great. Big easy retro. Sorry, Tracy, I missed your chat. So potentially braid is the wrong word, but hoping to use our capacity building program as, I envision it, and this is, again, still to be determined, but as almost a referral process where folks who have received capacity building funding might be able to have a streamlined access to pre-development loans if they meet certain milestones that they were intending to hit with their capacity building funds, with the acknowledgement that our pre-dev loan is going to have that kind of underwriting standards and sort of approval process that I think will require some things that capacity building funding is generally intended to pay for. So hoping that we can create systems that work together as opposed to these independent silos where if someone's using our capacity building funding so that they can have the necessary standards to meet the underwriting for a pre-development loan, we know that internally, and we can kind of allow folks to come in the door separately less, I guess is my thought process. And I think to sort of your thoughts on CDFI connections, I hope we can do similar things with you all, and sort of make sure we're not underwriting projects 5 times separately and independently, and really working together to make it easier on everyone and move a little faster. So yeah.
So this is John Marshall. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yeah, hi, John.
So how does the capacity building work if a nonprofit has to use a consultant to do the structuring and the so the sharing the developer fee and a lot of the financial benefits don't accrue to the organization that is trying to do the developer the development.
Yeah, I think
I can see the benefit in the pre-dev loan, but I mean if the capacity isn't built, isn't growing, within the organization, it's going to a consultant, how is the objective achieved?
it's a great question. I unfortunately am not super sure what the eligibility criteria for our capacity building funds have been beyond the organizational eligibility. So I'm not positive what level of collaboration with a consultant or other entities allows for access to capacity building funds. I know with the latest home ARP NOFA, we did restrict eligibility to specifically where the lead developer was an eligible entity, I believe. But I think that's again conversation we really are going to and will be having internally to determine how all of our resources are aligning in the best way. And I think one of the things, as you know, we were discussing and talking with other stakeholders around sort of pre-development nationally, was sort of this balancing act between that early capacity needs for an organization and the pre-development piece, where both are kind of in the same universe, but they really are paying for very separate things, I guess. And thinking about this as paying for these specific costs, this pre-development loan absolutely needs to take into account that organizations might not even be at a place where they can come in yet for a pre-development loan. And we want to work with, I guess, in the opposite direction too, with our capacity building program, and try to make sure that if an organization is trying to come in for a feasibility loan and they don't seem like they really are even there yet, to start that process of the project, that we might have some type of backwards referral system too, where we can try to get them capacity building dollars so that they can maybe staff up before they even start doing that site control piece, or, you know, the environmental testing or whatever else they might need to do. That's more eligible on the pre-dev side, but that is, you know, still again to be determined. I think that specific connection and piece with the capacity building funding, which are also, I think to Bill's point, you know, more limited competitive funds, and so we do need to be cognizant of that, and that we can't award that to everyone, unfortunately, because we just don't have enough of those resources available. So we're going to need to probably target those towards folks with the greatest need too. So it's going to have to all sync up together.
Yeah, I just want to, you know, keep that on the plate as a target.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks, John.
We have just under 6 minutes, I think, left in here. I don't see any hands up, but I'm reading through the questions. I'm seeing a lot of great input about, oh, not the questions, your comments, sorry. I had it, lost it, but how will pre-development work? Like, where is it going to be in the pipeline for us, and how are we going to marry all of these things, given we've got an executive order from the governor to try to work a little faster, however, and marry all these new programs and get new units. I'm just curious, and you guys have put this in here, but what are some of your, and we may not be able to get your comments today, but maybe what are some of your kind of comments around that? What are your ideas on how we can meet all of OHCS's expectations put on OHCS also? Because we have competing things we're working through, obviously. So maybe from that end of it, what are some of your ideas to help us make sure that we're meeting what you all need? Because we're in the middle, and we want these units too, right? We want to meet everybody's expectations. So maybe some comments around how we can better do that. That wasn't the most eloquently described, but anyway. Mitch can interpret for me, I don't know, but.
No, I think that was good, Heather. But so one of the things just that I think about as I look at all of the process redesign that's going on, and just some of the different things that have been described here today, is we're initiating new processes here, right? So you're compressing your timeline to that shorter window. That's not really necessarily speeding up the overall development timeline. And in the meantime, before your clock starts running, these are going to institute a number of different big efforts by the developers, right? They're going to have to fill out a whole pre-development application. They're going to have to get qualified under some of the other things we've talked about today. So, you know, I worry about what we're measuring when we talk about speeding up, when we're adding more work before the clock starts. And so I just feel compelled to say that so that you can think about that in your overall design, so that somewhere we start making things easier instead of harder for the developers, because right now it just feels like it's exceedingly difficult to get from start to finish. And we have to make that process cleaner and simpler. I know that wasn't probably helpful, but I think it's really important.
No, I think that's important framing, Bill, because really, I think we keep coming back to this internally, and we want to keep expressing this externally, is we want this process to improve the process that we're currently doing. And if you're seeing this and it's not, we want you to flag that, and we want to be able to identify those places early on so that we can make this work better for everyone. We want this to be easier for developers, and we want it to be easier for OHCS. We want everyone to be able to move through this process more smoothly, more effectively, and get to where they want to be more effectively. So go ahead. I think Lydia, you were first with your hand.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly agree with Bill's caution, and I think in one thing that's just coming to mind, even just in the topics presented today, I think there's some tension and maybe unintended exclusion, that's maybe the wrong word, between like the pre-qualification, in some ways even the DEI process, and this pre-development, where pre-development, OHCS is intending to really focus, particularly in that feasibility loan, on small organizations, rural organizations, and culturally specific. At the same time, those may be the folks who are less likely to, be evaluated positively through that pre-qualification. Their balance sheets, their finances are just stretched thinner, right? May not have the experience that other larger capacity organizations do. So even just in there, right, there's a disconnect between these two steps. So I think Bill is speaking to a need to think about all of these and how they do or don't play well together. And I'd say the same piece for the capacity building, which I know has not gotten hasn't gone a lot very far. And so just kind of reflecting on, again, I know I'm a broken record, but like early understanding of who projects, which projects are out there, who the sponsors are, how to kind of coordinate from the beginning. And then I think ultimately it's, maybe more work earlier, but it ends up in a more streamlined process on both developer sides and on OHCS's side.
Awesome, thanks.
We've just got like 10 seconds. It's gonna move us out of here pretty quick.
Someone else had their hand up.
Yeah.
But
I can't. I don't see it anymore.
That was me, but I've got the questions in there.
Okay.
So if they'll be followed up on, then that's totally fine.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, please keep adding your stuff to the retro board too. That.
Yes, super helpful. And again, share that survey broad and wide. We want to hear from everyone. Yeah, also please don't neglect the DEI and pre-qual conversations too. If you have a chance to provide input for those, and you didn't have anyone on your teams able to go into those rooms, definitely encourage you to do so. But really appreciate you coming here today. And I just want to keep reiterating, my door is open. We know we have to partner with folks on this, and I really want to be as communicative and collaborative as I possibly can. So please do reach out. Happy to set up meetings and all the things. So appreciate you all.
All right, welcome back, everyone. We hope the breakout rooms were fruitful discussion. I had the opportunity to party hop a little bit and go and check out the breakout rooms, and sounded like really rich discussions. So thank you again for being active, engaged participants in these topics. We do really appreciate all of your feedback and input, both in the live sessions, but also in the other ways that you can engage. So as soon as we close this meeting, the topic surveys will be available, and we'll keep those surveys open for about 2 weeks because there's a lot of stuff, right? All of the topics. And then if you're also interested in loan guarantee, there's surveys specific to those programs as well. So it's a lot of stuff, and recognize that. We know you all are super busy people. Appreciate you taking the time to review the materials and provide us this specific input. So you got a couple weeks, and we'll also be posting the recording from this meeting as well as the breakout rooms as soon as we can, so that you can then view the other breakout rooms that you weren't able to attend today. And you might want to review those before you complete the survey. Feel free to do that. Remember, the discussion documents are on the website now, so feel free to look at those materials as well. And then what we do is we start synthesizing the input that we received from the Easy Retro boards today, and then we'll combine it with the survey responses so that we can have a complete synthesis for each topic posted on our website, so that you see the compilation of the different responses and input to the questions that we're seeking. So right now, the readiness synthesis is available on our website. For those who were able to find it, we posted that on Monday before we sent out the technical advisory and the materials for this meeting. So we were trying to maintain that cadence where we are providing you the synthesis at the same time that we're providing the materials for the next sequence of topics that we're covering. So we hope that that's working for you. There is, obviously a lot of great input that we're receiving. So we're trying to do what we can and group and create themes for the input that you're providing us, so that you all can see that. The other thing is just also acknowledging there are a lot of links. And so I will send a follow-up email to all the registrants from this meeting so that you have that. And I'm going to put my email in the chat. If anyone has any issues accessing the materials, please feel free to reach out to me directly, and I will work with you to make sure that you can view those materials and you have access to the surveys and all of those things as well. So I'm going to put my email in the chat before we close. And then I did just want to flag also the upcoming engagement meetings, as well as we will be live in person at Housing Oregon on Thursday, September 28th. We have a session at 3:15 that afternoon, and we're very much looking forward to being in person and being able to have some human interaction instead of just the Zoom space, which is very efficient, but also looking forward to just have an opportunity to meet with you there if you're able to attend. And then we have upcoming session October 12th, where we will begin talking about funding frameworks, and then follow that up later in October 26th, with the part 2 of our funding frameworks discussions. So those are the kind of administrative pieces there around how we're running the engagement and collecting your input, synthesizing the input, and where you can find us in the near term as well. So with that, I think I'll turn it over to Natasha and help us close out this meeting today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Kim, and gratitude to the OHCS team who has orchestrated all of this content and breakout rooms, and to all of you who are engaging and giving input. Obviously we can't do this work without you, and really want to make sure that we strike the balance well in terms of both identifying consequences, impacts of change and transition, and making sure that we are putting in the strategies that we need to mitigate those impacts where they are not the ones we want to see. And so really in that mindset, keeping this engagement earnest, really focusing on real places where there are yet to be determined decisions and direction, and a lot of moving parts in the mix of all of that. I am, let's see, I think I do see in the chat the comments around questions about the breakout room discussions. All of the comments in those are being or have been or will be translated over to the retro board as a place where you can go and reference and make sure you're downloading any of your near-term thoughts. And then there will also be the survey, and again, mostly all synthesized back in. If there's something very in particular that you were wanting to get a copy of, please just raise that flag with Kim, and we can track it back with you. And you know, in terms of our Housing Oregon discussion, as Kim has referenced, we're kind of recapping on the broad vision of change, the conversations that we've had to date. We'll kind of key in on a few additional areas, but really trying to use the in-person time to add a different type of feedback and engagement back in, and understanding that we are, you know, this process is big and it is all interconnected. And we are also working to stand up different side pieces of conversations with focused feedback. You know, some of it has come through our engagement conversations here about groups that we might want to prioritize a centered, focused conversation for rural and culturally specific development partners. I was really happy this week to be able to go forward with the Racial Justice Council, to be able to have provide a very high level update of the change and direction, and get some really good feedback on areas where we want to make sure to be able to put in, again, these mitigating strategies in terms of the impact of competition on culturally specific providers, tribes, and others, and was able to also flag, you know, this is also the opportunity to think again, as I was referencing at the front end, you know, what is it that needs to be competitive versus what do we want to make sure we can have an expedited path to support and sustain our growing pipeline across the state. And so really looking for all of you know, wide range of opportunities to be able to have again, this core foundational engagement, but also you know, strategic side conversations to make sure we're seeing 360 as much as possible. We will be continuing to bring this work to Housing Stability Council. I think I'm looking to find ways to use those conversations more as a work session versus a formal presentation. And so we'll be, you know, council members are very much wanting to engage and give meaningful input. And so I think we'll be seeing some of the same materials come forward to them to have more generative dialogue in that space as well. And so I guess with that, we can wrap ourselves up. Really, again, overwhelming gratitude for you and all of the feedback that you've given already. And we'll hope we'll continue to provide in this process, and just real appreciation for all the work that you are doing. So thank you so much.
Thank you all. Take care.
Carolyn, I think we can end the meeting.
I'm unable to pause the recording now.
Oh, weird. Okay, I'll stop the recording and then
Oh, thank you.